Hey everybody, today we are going to talk about one of the most important documents in United States history, which is the Declaration of Independence. A little background, as you know, the Founding Fathers were meeting in Philadelphia at the Continental Congress to debate and decide whether or not to declare independence from Great Britain. And when it became clear to many that were there at that meeting that independence was necessary, they formed a committee made up of Ben Franklin from Pennsylvania, John Adams from Massachusetts, and most famously Thomas Jefferson, the delegate from Virginia, to write a document explaining why it was necessary to declare independence from Great Britain. This was unprecedented. This was revolutionary in and of itself, the fact that they were going to write their reasons down. And so what this becomes is a document that explains the purpose for why they are declaring independence, including the king's tyranny and oppression, and then gives some direct evidence as to prove that the king was being a tyrant. Interesting note, Jefferson, who wrote the document, he was deemed by the other two as the most eloquent writer, and he proved so after a couple weeks of writing and revising and writing and editing in a small little apartment in Philadelphia. What he emerged with was one of the most eloquently written, most famous documents in American history. But the first draft contained an attack on King George for introducing what he called this evil institution, a cruel war against human nature. And he was referring to slavery. He was blaming the king for bringing slavery to the colonies. What was interesting about that is not only that Jefferson owned slaves, but kind of weirdly enough, he believed that slavery was wrong, but so did Adams and Ben Franklin. None of them believed that slavery was a good thing, and yet Adams and Franklin made him take that out of the draft because they knew they would never get support from the southern colonies if they left that in there. So once the final draft was written, July 4th, 1776, this is why we have all those fun barbecues, is the day that the 56 delegates at the Continental Congress all signed their names, officially declaring the United States. Again, this is the first time that they are not called colonies. They call themselves states, officially declaring themselves free and independent of Great Britain. And the most famous signature, of course, being John Hancock's, nice and big, right at the top. And so you may be thinking, well, why is this still an important document to us today? It was written so many years ago. And I like to think of this as a mission statement for our country. A mission statement is usually a business term used, for what this business, or Franklin High School, for example, has a mission statement. It's what we strive to be. It's our goal. It's a belief. It's a set of beliefs. And this document is something that may not have been perfect in 1776, right? They were forced to take slavery out of it. We had slavery. Women were not considered equal. We had slavery until 1865. Native Americans were left out. And yet, in this document, it's sort of, this is what we want to live up to. This is what we want to be. And so we may not have been there in 1776 or 1876 or even 1976 or even today, but this is what we want to be. And every single group that has sort of fought for equality in our nation's past has used this document. The abolition movement to get rid of slavery, the women's suffrage movement to get women the right to vote. Martin Luther King used this document in his I Have a Dream speech, the gay rights movement, the feminist movement. All of these movements refer to the Declaration of Independence as this inspiration for why their movement, their group of people deserves equality and freedom and justice and all of the things that our nation, sort of set out believing in 1776. So that's why this document is still such an important document even still today in 2014. When you read the document, you're going to notice that it's divided into 4 parts. The preamble is the beginning. It's a really short little phrase in the beginning, and Jefferson here is just telling his audience what the purpose of the document is, which is to declare themselves independent. Then you have this longer paragraph, the introduction paragraph. And I like to think of that as his thesis statement. This is his main argument. This is where he uses the famous line, all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, of which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He goes on to talk about when the role of government, and that government gets their power from the consent of the governed, quote unquote, the permission of the people. And he talks about when it's okay for a people to rebel, when a government becomes oppressive and does not protect the people's natural rights. All of these ideas, right, coming from the Enlightenment philosophies, specifically of John Locke. And then, much like any thesis statement, you have to back it up with proof. And that proof comes in the next part of the document, which is his list of grievances or complaints. And he's going to give specific evidence that the king has, in fact, been tyrannical and oppressive. And you'll notice a lot of the things that we've talked about in class: the Boston Massacre, Bunker Hill, taxation without representation, etc., etc. And then the fourth and final part is the actual statement of independence. So just to check for understanding, I'd ask you to log on to It's Learning and take the brief quiz that is there and just see how you do. Make sure that you have a good understanding of the Declaration of Independence so that when we look at it tomorrow in class, you'll be able to look at the document and analyze it as a primary source. Thanks for listening. See you in class.